I walked into my mother-in-law's birthday party after 6 months abroad, only to see another woman cutting my mother-in-law's birthday cake like the perfect daughter-in-law, wearing my wedding ring, and hugging my children. When she announced, "I'm pregnant with Adrian's baby," to thunderous applause, I knew my family had replaced me completely. Family betrayal hits different when your own blood plots against you. This story has more twists than a soap opera, and a revenge so sweet, it'll give you chills. Hit that like button if you're ready for some serious family drama, because honey, this gets dark. Let's dive in. My name is Brianna, and 6 months ago, I thought I had the perfect life. A loving husband, 2 beautiful children, a mother-in-law who adored me, and a business that was expanding internationally. When the opportunity came to personally oversee our European expansion, I jumped at it. Adrian, my husband of 8 years, encouraged me, "Go build our empire, babe. We'll be here when you get back." Those words would haunt me for months. The first red flag should have been how quickly the family video calls stopped. At first, Adrian would call every day with the kids, Lucy and Max. My mother-in-law, Patricia, would pop in to chat about her gardening and the local gossip. Even my sister-in-law, Priya, would occasionally join to complain about her dating life. But gradually, the calls became shorter, less frequent. "We're all just busy," Adrian would say. "You focus on business. We've got everything handled here." I should have known that when Adrian says he has everything handled, it usually means he's creating a mess that someone else will have to clean up later. The second red flag was when I called on Patricia's birthday, 3 months into my trip, and got sent straight to voicemail. When I finally reached Adrian that evening, he seemed flustered. "Oh, Mom's birthday?" "Yeah, we celebrated. Priya organized everything. You know how she loves planning parties." Something in his voice felt off, but I was dealing with a major contract negotiation and didn't push further. The third red flag was when my children started mentioning Aunt Lexa in our brief conversations. "Aunt Lexa taught me to make pancakes," Lucy would say. "Aunt Lexa took us to the zoo," Max would add. When I asked Adrian who this Lexa was, he'd brush it off. "Oh, she's Priya's friend. She's been helping out with the kids since you've been gone." Helping out, that's what he called it. By month 5, something felt fundamentally wrong. The family group chat that used to ping constantly with photos and updates had gone silent. When I'd send pictures of my business meetings or the beautiful European cities I was visiting, I'd get brief responses. Nice or cool, that's it. My own family was becoming strangers, but business was booming. The European expansion was exceeding all projections. I was securing deals that would set our family up for generations. The irony wasn't lost on me. While I was building our financial empire, apparently my personal empire was crumbling. I decided to surprise them by coming home a month early. I planned to arrive on Patricia's birthday, her 65th, and surprise her with an early return and an expensive gift I'd found in Paris. I imagined her face lighting up, the kids running to hug me, Adrian sweeping me off my feet. I imagined wrong. The house looked different when I pulled into the driveway. New flowers in the garden, wind chimes I'd never seen before, a different welcome mat. Through the windows, I could see the party in full swing. Cars I didn't recognize filled our driveway and lined the street. I smiled, thinking how wonderful that Patricia had so many friends celebrating with her. I grabbed my gifts and walked through the front door of my own home, expecting squeals of delight and surprise. Instead, I got something much more shocking. There in my dining room stood a woman I'd never seen before. She was beautiful, long auburn hair, perfect makeup, wearing a burgundy dress that looked suspiciously like one I'd left in my closet. But that wasn't the shocking part. The shocking part was that she was wearing my grandmother's wedding ring. The ring Adrian had proposed with. The ring I'd taken off and left in my jewelry box because I was afraid of losing it during my travels. She was cutting Patricia's birthday cake like she'd done it 100 times before, chatting and laughing with my family like she belonged there. Patricia was beaming at her with a maternal pride I thought she reserved only for me. My children were sitting at her feet, looking up at her with adoration. And Adrian, my husband, the father of my children, the man I'd been building a fortune for, was looking at her like she hung the moon. "Surprise!" I said, my voice barely above a whisper, but it cut through the party chatter like a knife. Every head turned. The room went deadly silent. Patricia's face went white. Priya looked like she'd seen a ghost, or more accurately, like her worst nightmare had just walked through the door. But this Lexa woman? She just smiled. A slow, confident smile that made my blood run cold. "Oh," she said, her voice honey-sweet but with an edge of steel, "you must be Brianna. Adrian's told me so much about you." She paused, letting her eyes travel over me with obvious judgment. "Though he mentioned you were still in Europe." The audacity. The sheer audacity of this woman to speak to me like I was an unexpected guest in my own home. Adrian finally found his voice. "Brianna, what are you doing here? I thought you weren't coming back until next month. Not welcome home, not I missed you, not even happy to see you. Just confusion about why I was there, in my own house, at my mother-in-law's birthday party." "I wanted to surprise Patricia," I managed to say, still trying to process what I was seeing. "Happy birthday, Patricia." Patricia looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. "Thank you, dear," she mumbled, not meeting my eyes. That's when Lucy, my 5-year-old daughter, piped up. "Mommy, you're here." But Aunt Lexa already helped us make Grandma's cake. She knows Grandma's favorite recipe. Aunt Lexa knew Patricia's favorite recipe, a recipe I'd been making for Patricia's birthday for 7 years. "That's wonderful, sweetheart," I said, kneeling down to hug my children. At least they seemed happy to see me. "I missed you so much." "We missed you too," Max said. "But Aunt Lexa has been taking really good care of us. She braids Lucy's hair just like you do, and she makes the pancakes with the smiley faces." Every word from my son's mouth felt like a small knife to my heart. This woman had been living my life, taking care of my children, learning their routines, making their favorite foods. She'd inserted herself into my family so seamlessly that my own children were praising her for doing the things their mother should be doing. But the real shock came next. Lexa stood up gracefully, smoothing down her dress, my dress, and cleared her throat. The room's attention turned to her like she was the hostess of this party in my house. "Actually, since everyone's here," she said, her voice carrying easily through the room, "Adrian and I have some exciting news to share." My heart stopped. The room held its breath. Adrian looked nervous but not surprised, which meant he knew what was coming. "I'm pregnant," she announced, her hand moving to her stomach in that universal gesture of expectant mothers. "Adrian and I are going to have a baby." The room erupted in cheers and applause. Patricia started crying with joy. Priya jumped up to hug Lexa. Extended family members I'd known for years rushed to congratulate them both. And I stood there in my own living room, watching my family celebrate my husband having a baby with another woman. Adrian wouldn't meet my eyes. He looked guilty but not regretful. There's a difference, and I was learning to recognize it. "Congratulations," I heard myself say, though I'm not sure how I managed to form the words. Lexa turned to me with that same honey-sweet smile. "Thank you, Brianna. I hope we can be friends. After all, we're going to be family now." Family. She was carrying my husband's child, wearing my ring, living in my house, raising my children, and now she wanted to be family. That's when I noticed something else. The family photos that used to line our mantelpiece had been subtly rearranged. Pictures of me had been moved to less prominent positions or removed entirely. In their place were photos of family gatherings I wasn't in. Adrian and the kids at the beach with Lexa, Patricia and Lexa cooking together in our kitchen, Priya, Lexa, and the kids at what looked like a school event. They hadn't just replaced me, they'd erased me. I excused myself and went upstairs to what used to be our bedroom. Our wedding photos had been turned face down. Lexa's clothes hung in my closet alongside Adrian's. Her toiletries had taken over my bathroom counter. Even my pillow smelled like her perfume. In 6 months, I'd been completely erased from my own life. I sat on the edge of what used to be our bed and tried to process everything. While I'd been building a business empire worth millions, securing our family's financial future for generations, my husband had been building a new life with someone else. While I'd been sacrificing personal time to create wealth, he'd been sharing intimate moments with another woman. While I'd been planning our future, he'd been planning a future without me. But here's the thing about being underestimated. It gives you a tremendous advantage. The next morning, I called my lawyer, then my accountant, then my financial advisor. What I discovered over the next few days made everything very interesting indeed. First, the house Adrian was so generous in sharing with his pregnant girlfriend, it was in my name. My excellent credit and business income had secured the mortgage when Adrian's credit was less than stellar 5 years ago. Second, the cars everyone was driving, including the luxury SUV I'd seen Lexa climbing out of, all registered in my name, all payments coming from my accounts. Third, Adrian's lifestyle, the expensive dinners, the weekend getaways, the shopping trips Priya had mentioned in her social media posts, all funded by the business income that I generated. Fourth, and most importantly, the European expansion I'd been working on. It hadn't just been successful, it had been phenomenally successful. I now had the kind of financial independence that most people only dream of. Adrian had been living off my money while cheating on me with a woman who thought she'd landed a billionaire. The irony was delicious, but I needed more information before I made any moves. I needed to understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. I stayed at a hotel for a few days and did some investigating. What I found out made my blood boil, but also made me smile. Because if you're going to go to war, it's better to have all the ammunition. Patricia, my mother-in-law, who had treated me like a daughter for 8 years, had not only welcomed Lexa with open arms, but had actively encouraged the relationship. According to my housekeeper Maria, who had remained loyal to me throughout this whole mess, Patricia had been complaining about my selfishness for months. "A good wife doesn't abandon her family for business," she'd apparently said. "Adrian deserves someone who puts family first." Priya's role was even more insidious. She hadn't just introduced Lexa to Adrian, she'd orchestrated the entire thing. Maria overheard her on the phone bragging to a friend, "I finally found someone perfect to replace my uptight sister-in-law. Lexa knows how to make a man feel appreciated." Priya had been jealous of my success for years. While she struggled in dead-end jobs and failed relationships, I'd built a thriving business and maintained what everyone thought was a solid marriage. She'd been waiting for the chance to take me down, and my business trip had given her the perfect opportunity. But the most devastating betrayal came from Adrian himself. According to Maria, he'd been bad-mouthing me to anyone who would listen. "Brianna doesn't care about family anymore. All she cares about is money. Lexa actually wants to be here." He'd painted me as the villain in our story, the career-obsessed wife who abandoned her family for profit. Meanwhile, he was the victim, the devoted father and son who deserved someone who appreciated him. The narrative was neat, clean, and completely false. But it had worked. The entire family had bought into it. There was just one problem with their perfect story. I had receipts for everything. Bank records showing that Adrian's successful business had been hemorrhaging money for months, kept afloat only by my European contracts. Credit card statements revealing expensive dinners and hotel rooms during times when I thought Adrian was home with the kids. Phone records showing hours of calls between Adrian and Lexa while he was telling me he was too busy to talk. And then there was Lexa's pregnancy. Something about her announcement had felt off, and my instincts were rarely wrong about these things. I hired a private investigator, not to spy on my cheating husband, but to verify some facts. What he found was even better than I'd hoped. Lexa wasn't pregnant. She'd never been pregnant. The medical records she'd shown Adrian were forged. She'd been using a fake pregnancy to trap him into a committed relationship, probably planning to fake a miscarriage once they were married, and she had legal claim to what she thought was his fortune. The woman who had been playing house with my family, winning over my children, and convincing my mother-in-law that she was the better choice, was running a con, and not even a particularly sophisticated one. But that wasn't the best part. The best part was that Lexa had been systematically stealing from the family. Small amounts at first, taking cash from Patricia's purse during visits, charging personal expenses to Adrian's credit card. But as she got more comfortable and confident in her position, she'd gotten bolder. She'd been using Patricia's credit card for online shopping, telling her it was for family necessities. She'd been skimming money from the household accounts, covering it by manipulating the elderly woman who trusted her. She'd even taken some of my jewelry, not just the ring, but pieces Patricia had given me over the years, and sold them online. Lexa wasn't just a home wrecker, she was a thief. And thieves, in my experience, always get sloppy. Armed with all this information, I planned my counterattack. I wasn't going to slink away quietly like the abandoned wife they expected me to be. I was going to remind them all who had built the comfortable life they were enjoying, and what happened when you bit the hand that fed you. The plan was simple, but devastating. I would gather the entire family together, not just Adrian, Patricia, and Priya, but all the extended family members who had celebrated Lexa's pregnancy announcement while barely acknowledging my return. I would present my evidence systematically, methodically, and publicly, and then I would give them a choice: respect or consequences. I sent out invitations for a family dinner at the house, my house, to celebrate my return and discuss important family matters. Everyone accepted, even Lexa, who apparently now felt comfortable enough to respond to invitations to family events in my home. The audacity was breathtaking, but it was also perfect for my purposes. I spent the day of the dinner preparing, not cooking. I hired caterers for that. I was preparing documents, evidence, and consequences. I had legal papers drawn up. I had financial statements printed. I had my private investigator's report bound in a neat folder. I also had security stationed discreetly around the property. Not because I expected violence, but because I expected some people might want to leave quickly, and I wanted to make sure certain individuals stayed until law enforcement arrived. When everyone gathered in my dining room that evening, the atmosphere was tense. Nobody knew quite what to expect. Adrian looked nervous. Priya looked defiant. Patricia looked confused. And Lexa? Lexa looked like she owned the place. She was wearing another one of my dresses, a red one that had always been my favorite. She'd styled her hair the way I used to wear mine. She was even wearing my perfume. The woman hadn't just stolen my life, she'd stolen my identity. "Thank you all for coming," I began, standing at the head of the table, my table, in my house, surrounded by my family. "I know the last few months have been confusing and difficult for everyone." Lexa actually had the nerve to reach across the table and pat my hand condescendingly. "It's so good that you're ready to move forward, Brianna. I think we can all be mature about this situation. Move forward, mature. Like I was the problem that needed managing." "Oh, I'm definitely ready to move forward," I said with a smile. "In fact, I've learned some fascinating things while I've been away that I think everyone should know about." I started with the finances. I pulled out bank statements and mortgage documents and spread them across the table like playing cards. "Patricia," I said to my mother-in-law, "you know how grateful you've been that Adrian could afford to take such good care of the family while I was away? The nice dinners out, the shopping trips, the comfortable lifestyle you've all been enjoying?" She nodded uncertainly. "All of that has been funded by my business success. The European expansion that took me away from the family, it's generated more income in 6 months than Adrian's business has made in the last 2 years. I pulled out Adrian's business records I had legal access to since we were still legally married, and I'd been a silent partner in his ventures. In fact, Adrian's business has been losing money steadily since I left. Without my income, this family would have been facing bankruptcy months ago." Adrian's face went white. "Brianna, you don't need to—" "Oh, but I do need to," I interrupted. "Because everyone here has been operating under the assumption that Adrian is the successful provider, and I'm the selfish wife who abandoned her family for money. But the truth is, I am the money. Everything you've been enjoying, this house, these cars, these comfortable lives, exists because of my work." I turned to Patricia. "Mom, You've been so impressed with Lexa's dedication to family. Did you know that family dedication has been funded entirely by me? The woman you chose over me has been living off the money I earn." Patricia looked stricken. I didn't know." "Of course you didn't. Because Adrian has been lying to all of you." Then I pulled out the private investigator's report. "But financial deception isn't the only lie you've been living with." I opened the folder and pulled out medical documents. Lexa's pregnancy, the pregnancy you all celebrated, the baby that's supposed to make her part of this family, it's fake. The room erupted. Everyone started talking at once. Lexa jumped to her feet, her face flushed with anger. "That's ridiculous," she shouted. "How dare you? I have medical records," I said calmly. "Real medical records, not the forged documents you showed Adrian. You've never been pregnant, Lexa. This has all been an elaborate lie to trap my husband." Adrian looked like he was going to be sick. "That's impossible. I saw the test results." "Forged," I said, sliding the comparison documents across to him. "Our investigator traced the source. You can buy fake pregnancy documents online for $50, but I wasn't done. I pulled out financial records showing the thefts. And Patricia, those mysterious charges on your credit card that Lexa said were for family groceries? They were actually for designer clothes and spa treatments. Our devoted family woman has been systematically stealing from an elderly woman who trusted her." Patricia gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "My credit card. I thought I was just getting confused about what I'd bought. Lexa has been gaslighting you, manipulating you, and stealing from you. The jewelry that's been going missing from the house, she's been selling it online. I pulled out printed receipts from various resale websites, including the necklace your late husband gave you for your 40th wedding anniversary." Patricia started crying. That necklace had been her most treasured possession. Priya tried to jump to Lexa's defense. "Even if that's true, it doesn't excuse you abandoning your family." "Abandoning my family?" I turned to my sister-in-law with fire in my eyes. "Priya, let's talk about abandonment. Let's talk about how you orchestrated this entire situation because you were jealous of my success." I pulled out printed screenshots of text messages our investigator had recovered from Lexa's phone, messages between her and Priya planning the whole seduction. "You actively recruited Lexa to break up my marriage. You coached her on Adrian's preferences, told her about family traditions, even gave her information about my schedule so she could maximize her time with him while I was working." The texts were damning. Messages like, "Make sure you're there when he's stressed about Brianna's work calls," and "Cook his mother's recipe, he'll think you're more caring than his wife," and "Play up the pregnancy angle, men always fall for that." Priya's face went ashen. I thought, "You thought you'd destroy my marriage because you were jealous that I had something you wanted, a successful business, a loving husband, a stable life. So you decided to take it away from me." The room was completely silent now, except for Patricia's quiet sobs. But I had one more revelation, and it was the most important one. "Here's what none of you understood," I said, pulling out legal documents. "While you were all playing your little games, I was building something much bigger than any of you imagined." I spread the papers across the table, incorporation documents, partnership agreements, profit statements. The European expansion wasn't just successful, it was so successful that I now own controlling interest in multiple international companies. I have assets worth more than any of you ever dreamed of. Adrian's mouth fell open. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that while you thought you were trading me in for a younger model, you were actually giving up your claim to a fortune. The business you thought was yours, it's mine now. The house you've been living in, mine. The cars, the accounts, the comfortable lifestyle you've all been enjoying, all mine." I stood up and looked around the table at their shocked faces. "Lexa, you thought you were conning a millionaire, but Adrian isn't the millionaire in this family. I am. And now that I know what you are, a thief, a liar, and a fraud, you have exactly 1 hour to pack your belongings and leave my house before I have you arrested." Lexa tried one last desperate play. "Adrian, you can't let her do this. We're in love. We're going to have a baby." "There is no baby," Adrian exploded, finally finding his voice. "You lied to me. You've been lying about everything." The beautiful composure Lexa had maintained cracked completely. "So, what if I lied? You were miserable with her. I made you happy. I gave you everything she couldn't." "You gave me nothing," Adrian said quietly. "You stole everything. From my wife, from my mother, from my children. You made me betray the woman who built our entire life." I turned to Patricia. "Mom, I've loved you like my own mother for 8 years. But you chose a stranger over me. You celebrated her pregnancy while barely acknowledging my return. You need to decide right now whether you want to be part of this family going forward, because if you are, there are going to be new rules." Patricia was crying harder now. "Brianna, I'm so sorry. I was so foolish. Lexa seemed so devoted, and I thought you didn't care about us anymore." "I was working 16-hour days to secure our family's future," I said. "Every contract I signed, every deal I closed, every sacrifice I made was for this family. And while I was doing that, you were all planning my replacement." I looked around the table one more time. "Here's what's going to happen. Lexa, you're leaving now. Security will escort you out. Don't take anything that doesn't belong to you, and at this point that's very little." As if on cue, 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Lexa looked around desperately, but nobody was coming to her rescue anymore. "Priya," I continued, "you're no longer welcome in my house. Your inheritance from the family business? Forfeited. Your position in the company? Terminated. You wanted to destroy my marriage so badly that you brought a criminal into our family. There are consequences for that." Priya started to protest, but I held up my hand. "I have enough evidence of your involvement in this conspiracy to make things very legally complicated for you. I suggest you leave quietly and count yourself lucky that I'm not pressing charges." Finally, I turned to Adrian. "And you? You threw away 8 years of marriage, betrayed the mother of your children, and humiliated me in front of our entire family. But most importantly, you broke our children's hearts by choosing someone else over their mother." Adrian looked broken. "Brianna, I'm sorry. I was lonely. I was confused. I made terrible mistakes." "Yes, you did. And now you're going to live with the consequences." I pulled out one final set of documents. "Divorce papers. I'm filing tomorrow. You'll get standard visitation with the kids, but custody stays with me. The house stays with me. The business stays with me. You'll get a settlement that will keep you comfortable, but the fortune I built while you were playing house with your girlfriend, that's mine." The room was completely silent. Even Patricia had stopped crying. "But here's the thing," I said, my voice softening slightly. "Despite everything you've all put me through, you're still family. Patricia, if you want to rebuild our relationship, I'm willing to try. But it happens on my terms, with honesty and respect." I looked at my children, who had been staying with friends during this confrontation, but would be coming home soon. Lucy and Max don't deserve to suffer because the adults in their lives made terrible choices. So we're going to figure out how to co-parent respectfully, Adrian. But the woman who lied about being pregnant while stealing from your mother? She's never coming near my children again. As security escorted Lexa out, she was screaming threats and curses that revealed exactly the kind of person she really was. I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Relief. The truth was finally out. The lies were exposed. The people who had betrayed me were facing consequences. But most importantly, I had my power back. Over the following weeks, things settled into a new normal. Patricia and I began rebuilding our relationship slowly. She was genuinely remorseful and worked hard to regain my trust. Adrian moved into a smaller place and started therapy to figure out how he'd made such devastating choices. The divorce proceedings were civilized but firm. Priya tried to cause more drama through social media and family connections, but when people learned the truth about her role in orchestrating the affair and Lexa's crimes, she found herself isolated from most of the family. Lexa tried to come back several times, even attempting to contact the children at school, but restraining orders and criminal charges for theft tend to be quite effective deterrents. The children adjusted remarkably well once they understood that Mommy was home to stay and that the family would be stable again, even if it looked different than before. And me? I threw myself back into building our empire, this time with the knowledge that I was doing it for my children and myself, not for people who would betray me the moment I turned my back. The business continued to thrive. The European expansion led to opportunities in Asia and South America. Within a year, I had built something that would secure my children's futures no matter what happened. But more importantly, I had learned who I could trust and who I couldn't. I had learned that being underestimated could be an advantage, and I had learned that sometimes the people who think they're replacing you are actually just revealing their own character flaws. Lexa thought she was stealing my life, but she was actually just proving that she was the kind of person who steals. Adrian thought he was upgrading to someone more devoted, but he was actually just revealing that he was the kind of person who abandons his family when things get difficult. They didn't take anything from me that I couldn't rebuild bigger and better, but they showed me exactly who they were, and I'll never forget that lesson. 6 months later, when Patricia called to tell me that Lexa had been arrested for running the same con on another family across town, I wasn't surprised. Leopards don't change their spots, and people who build their lives on lies eventually get caught. I had my life back. My children were safe and happy. My business was thriving, and I had learned to value the people who stood by me and dismiss the people who didn't. Sometimes being betrayed is the best thing that can happen to you. It shows you who your real allies are, it reveals your own strength, and it clears out the people who are holding you back. I was no longer just Adrian's wife or Patricia's daughter-in-law, or even just Lucy and Max's mother. I was Brianna, businesswoman, millionaire, survivor, and the queen of my own life, and that crown fit perfectly. Never mess with a woman who built her own empire while keeping the family together. I didn't just return, I reminded everyone who the real queen was. What would you have done in my situation? Drop your revenge ideas in the comments, and if you loved this family drama, subscribe for more shocking stories that'll keep you on the edge of your seat.